drain is plugged and the water won't stop pouring down on me. The water rises to my ankles, to my waist, then over my head. The shower curtain turns to glass, and my screams turn to gurgles. Outside, a dark figure appears and presses its face against the glass, watching me. I plead and pound with my fists, but it won't let me out. I swallow water and flail helplessly in my glass coffin. I wake up gasping. I know where the nightmares came from. I never have to dig deep. The incident is never far from my subconscious. Finding it is all too easy. Getting over it is not. It was the summer of my 12th birthday when the Hudsons moved in across the street. 3 people, one of them a really old woman. She was tiny, frail, skeletal almost. Thin white hair, a faded blue flower dress. Her head hung from her neck, and it wobbled as the man pushed her up a makeshift wheelchair ramp into the house. At the time, I couldn't figure out if she was alive or dead. A few minutes later, she appeared in an upstairs window, sitting in her wheelchair. She was directly facing my bedroom. I cautiously peered out from behind my curtains. Her head was upright now, and she stared at me. Just stared, without moving an inch. I closed my drapes. For days she sat at that window. She watched the cars putter down our suburban road and gazed at the neighborhood kids scurrying through their yards. I never saw anyone else in the room. Never saw her move from that wheelchair. At night, I'd nervously peek through the crack in my drapes. Her silhouette was still in that window, lights off, staring out into the darkness at my bedroom. I couldn't tell, but I knew she was watching me. The stories about her cropped up pretty quick amongst my friends in the neighborhood that she was a witch, that she was just a doll, or that she was actually dead. But I knew she wasn't. Sure, I never saw her move from that window. Not once. And I never saw her turn her head. But I felt her eyes move as they studied me. I could feel her watching me. All alone in my bedroom, in the middle of the night with my drapes firmly shut, I'd wake up and shudder. Her eyes were on me. I just knew it. As a result, I began sleeping on the floor. I felt the lower I was, the better. Maybe she couldn't see me if I was on the floor. I told my parents that the old woman across the street was creeping me out. I pleaded with them to talk to the Hudsons and ask them to move her to a room without a window that faced mine. They laughed and told me to let her live out her twilight years in peace. She was just watching the street, they said, and that probably made her feel happy and younger. Are you just going to stick me in a windowless room somewhere when I'm an old lady? My mom laughed. Remind me to move in with your sister when I'm in a wheelchair. A week later, there was a commotion at the Hudsons. I watched from my bedroom window as Mr. Hudson ran out of the house and opened up the double doors of his van. He jogged inside and reappeared minutes later, pushing the old woman in her wheelchair down the ramp. She looked frailer than before. She couldn't have weighed more than 70 pounds. Her head was flung to the side, resting on her right shoulder. Her body jostled in the wheelchair's seat, but her eyes never left mine. They watched me the whole time. He picked her up and placed her in the car. He folded the wheelchair and stuffed it in the trunk. Then he quickly hopped into the driver's seat, his wife into the passenger seat, and he put his foot to the pedal. As they drove away, the old woman's head still faced me. It bobbed up and down as the van reversed down the driveway. I studied her face. It was expressionless, emotionless. Her tongue protruded slightly from the right side of her mouth, but her eyes were still locked on mine. The van accelerated down the street, and it was gone. My parents heard the news that afternoon from their neighbors. The old woman's condition was getting worse, and the Hudsons had taken her to some sort of institution. She wouldn't be coming back. I went straight to my bedroom and looked across the street, smiling. Her window was finally empty. The next day, the Hudsons didn't return. That night, I looked out towards the old woman's window again. There was no one there, no wheelchair. Yet the bedroom light was on. I remember telling my dad I thought it was strange. He just shrugged and said, "Must be on some sort of timer or something." I woke up in the middle of the night and nervously peered out my bedroom window. That light was still on. Suddenly, it flicked off, and I ducked beneath my window frame. I slowly looked out, expecting to see the silhouette of that tiny skeletal being. I watched for 10 minutes, pinching and straining my eyes to see. The lights quickly flickered on and then off again. That night I slept on the floor again, clutching my pillow close. I had a late baseball practice the next evening. When I got home, my house was empty. I knew my parents were at my little sister's softball game, so I headed to the shower to rinse off. About 3 minutes into that shower, I suddenly felt cold. The hot steam was escaping the bathroom somehow, which didn't make sense because I knew I had shut the door. Wiping the shampoo from my eyes, I turned my head and heard a strange noise that would haunt me for decades after. The metal rings of the shower curtain being dragged across the shower rod. Someone was slowly opening the curtain. The shampoo stung my eyes, and through the stinging I saw the silhouette of a dark figure beyond. Long, pale, bony fingers gripped the curtain as it slowly opened. Instinctively, I backed up as far as I could. Then the curtain opened completely. There stood the old woman. I must have only looked at her for 1, maybe 2 seconds, but in that moment time stood still. All these years later, I can still draw you a vivid picture of the horrifying image in front of me. Disheveled white hair, bones jutting out from under her stretched skin, stark naked. Blotchy skin, warts all over her body, skinny breasts hanging to her waist, hair where I didn't know people could grow it. She smiled grotesquely, and I felt the cold shower tile against my back and the hot water pouring down on my face. In the other hand, the old woman held a gleaming letter opener.
"August,"
she murmured.
"August, August, August."
Mustering all my courage, I leaped past her, knocking her tiny body to the floor. I ran downstairs, naked and sopping wet, yet not caring. In my panic, I somehow remembered I was nude, and I yanked a pair of shorts out of the hamper in the laundry room, sending the hamper crashing to the floor. I raced on foot down the street, eventually winding up at my friend's house. When the police arrived, they found the old woman lying crumpled in a heap on the floor. The shower was still running. The police were all really nice to me, admiring me for my bravery. I told them what she said to me, August, and asked if they knew what she could have meant. "It will be August in a few days," one of them said, "and you can never fully understand old and crazy, son." The Hudsons only came to our street once more to retrieve their things. The for sale sign was soon up in days. My mom told me they couldn't face the neighbors for what had happened. Apparently they had taken the old woman, the man's mother, to another special home downstate. Somehow, some way, the woman managed to escape the home and caught a bus back to our town. It never quite made sense to me. She was so old, so frail and helpless. She could barely move those weeks she lived in that house. How had she managed to travel hundreds of miles on her own? Anyway, you can imagine my reaction to all the circumstances. I didn't shower for 21 years after. Instead, I took baths, which I suppose aren't that different. It's still a tub and it involves hot, soapy water. But a shower with its closed curtain, water peppering the tub floor and steam climbing the walls. You get lost inside your own head there. Thoughts consume you, and it feels so utterly safe. For a few minutes, it's as if you're alone from the world. It's your own private, misty kingdom. But that's what makes the shower dangerous. You're enclosed, vulnerable, naked. You're exposed. I talked to people about it, my parents, a shrink, but mainly I tried to push the incident deep down into places where I couldn't find it again. I didn't talk about it with anyone since I was a kid. Life carried on. Besides taking baths, life was pretty normal. A few months ago, something inside me clicked. I felt the urge to re-examine the incident. It was almost like a voice in my head was telling me to do it. Like my mind wanted closure or catharsis or something. I spent hours online one night trying to track down any information on the Hudsons and the old woman. I finally found what I was looking for, an obituary for the old woman. She had died 4 years before. Somehow that walking skeleton hadn't checked out for another 15 years. The obituary photo was a black and white picture from when she was a young woman. It was a photo of her and her deceased husband on their wedding day. His name was August, and he looked exactly like me. I immediately shut down the browser and stared at my computer for what seemed like an eternity. It finally made sense why she had called me August, why she was obsessed with watching me through her window. Maybe she used to write letters to her husband, and that's why she was clutching the letter opener that night she came to me while I showered. For a small moment, I felt a little better. Things always feel better when they make more sense. "Honey, is everything okay?" It was my wife. "I think so," I said. That night, I took the first shower I had taken in years. I didn't even jump when the curtain rungs dragged across the rod, and my wife entered. But as she embraced me under the hot, soothing water, one question wouldn't leave my mind. Why did the young woman in that wedding photo look exactly like my wife?
Hi, my name is Jordan Gibbs, and my channel is going to be about scary, spooky ghost stories. And I would like 2 million subscribers.